Happy holidays and welcome to day 2 of 12 Days of DevOps. And I'm going to go through one of the more popular tools today in DevOps, and I will start with sharing my screen. So here we go. 12 Days of DevOps. Just as a kickoff, please read the disclaimer. This presentation contains my personal opinions and does not reflect the views of any organization, institution, or group associated with me. By watching this presentation, you acknowledge and agree to the terms of this disclaimer. I'm not going to read the whole disclaimer, but you can pause it and read it at your own leisure. Okay, that being said, let's move on to Crossplane. Now, Crossplane is the ultimate DevOps tool. I'm not a Crossplane expert, and this is not a Crossplane sales presentation. But that being said, it is a powerful infrastructure automation tool that brings simplicity, flexibility, and extensibility to modern cloud-native environments. In the last year, have been very interested in Crossplane. We have one client that I've worked with that is using Crossplane, but there's a great article on Crossplane on Hacker Noon. If you look up on Hacker Noon, delivering cloud infrastructure the GitOps way with Crossplane, you'll see this diagram, which shows with GitOps that using GitHub as the single source of truth for your deployments, they walk through how to use Argo CD to read the manifest that has Crossplane deployed on this Kubernetes cluster. This Kubernetes cluster then uses the Crossplane provider for AWS, and it can deploy AWS infrastructure in an AWS account, multiple accounts. In this example, it's 3 queues, Q1, 2, 3 on AWS. So that being said, there are many providers. We'll get into that as we go, but I think you're going to really enjoy this presentation. So what is Crossplane? As I said, Crossplane is a Kubernetes control plane. And it does enable you hybrid cloud. It's very extensible through the providers. And I'm going to explain why it's a little bit different than just using Terraform. Terraform, if you're not sure, is infrastructure as code, which is also has providers, but it doesn't have a full control plane associated with it. So Crossplane eliminates the need for manual tasks and brings uniformity. There is a building block pattern. Compared to other tools, Crossplane empowers developers with a unified platform and an ecosystem. So it has many providers, AWS, GCP, Azure, Kubernetes, even Terraform. If you go to the providers list, you can see that if you search Terraform in here, you will find in the Upbound marketplace, you'll find the Terraform provider for Crossplane. It also has an OpenStack, so you could deploy it with OpenStack on-prem infrastructure as well. You could do any cloud, most cloud providers, and it's, as I mentioned, very extensible. So in the details, and I know this is a rushed presentation because we only have about 10-15 minutes, but Crossplane uses compositions to define the infrastructure in a modular pattern or composable modular design. So you design with compositions, you design your infrastructure, you create reusable, customizable, and testable infrastructure resources. I'll go through a workshop where I show some of these examples. A simple use case is creating an S3 bucket or RDS database on AWS or EC2 instance. And there are some examples within the AWS provider. This is one example that you can find on GitHub, Crossplane contrib at the provider AWS, where you see the bucket. It's using the Crossplane API, creating a bucket, a test bucket. So that being said, there are many examples that you can already look at for AWS. AWS itself has many different providers for different types of infrastructure on AWS. There is also, as far as Crossplane, it's multi-cloud, infrastructure as code, APIs, custom resource definitions, extensible. There's a huge community and many resources available. And without spending any more time talking about Crossplane in this presentation, I'd like to go through a workshop. So, introduction to Crossplane. I know this is going to seem a little rushed, but you can find this exact workshop on killercoda.com, Introduction to Crossplane. And I encourage you to do that. This example is going to take you through a Kubernetes cluster where Kubernetes is already installed with K3s cluster, Helm, Crossplane CLI, and the Kubernetes provider. If you go into kubectl, you can see the pods, and you will see that there is, in fact, the Kubernetes Crossplane installed. You can also get the cluster info. You'll see the control plane is running locally on 127.0.0.1, which is the local host. Core DNS and the metric server is also running. You also have a Octane dashboard that you can look at with UI, but with the user interface. But we're going to focus on kubectl today. In this exact workshop, we're going to go through a Kubernetes provider example. So just deploying an application on Kubernetes with Crossplane, because I think this is the simplest example. But remember, it could be deploying any kind of infrastructure. So first off, what are we going to do? We're going to look at the definition, resource definition, which is XRD. So today, right now, if we do kubectl, first thing, get XRD. There aren't any resources. There aren't any resource definitions. If we look at the first definition, there's already a definition in here as far as an app. Custom resource definition, CRD cross, it's connecting to the Crossplane API, and it's going to create this application or this composite resource definition. And so you're starting, that's the base building block of your Kubernetes application. So from there, you're going to go ahead and deploy that definition. Okay, so once I deploy that definition, I can see the definition is there. Okay, now you see right here, the apps.acme platform definition's been created. Now, if I do a get XRD, I can see it. If I go in, and now I can also deploy the composition against that. If I can type, evidently I can. Okay. You will see in the composition, there is the type is composition, kind is composition, also the Crossplane API, and it is really a composite resource, whereas composition defines what managed resources will be created when composite resource is created. So first off, you're creating the XRD, which is the resource definition, and then you're creating the composition. Okay, so once that's applied, you will see now the app front end is created against that composition.yaml. Now, if I get compositions, you can see app front end, app XR kind, the resource kind definition is app. Now it's on this API version, it's acmeplatform.com. Now, if I do, now I'm going to create a app within the DevOps namespace. So I'm going to create the DevOps team namespace, and then we're going to create inside of that DevOps team's namespace, we're going to create this app claim, which is going to use the Acme platform app. So it's going to do an app claim against that. And it's going to deploy it with the Nginx -demo green. And you'll be able to see that because the actual background will be green. So if I do a kubectl wait deployment, you can see now it has been deployed, and you can see the deployment. Once I port forward, you can actually open the web page that shows now the Kubernetes demo v1 is green. Okay. The reason that's important is in a second, we're going to change it to blue. Okay, so now, after that, we can now update that app claim with a new image. So if I look at, clear. Now, if I look at the app claim blue, I can see now this is a nginx-blue. Okay, so if I apply that, it's going to update that app claim against platform demo. And once it's deployed, the condition is met. I will now be able to go back, forward it, and I can refresh, and this should be blue. And it is. Voila. And it's really that simple, but it's not as just this is running within a typical deployment. This is actually deployed on top of the Crossplane core. So it's actually using the resource definition and the composition that we just talked about in here to use the Crossplane components, compositions components, which again are a composable modular design with as a framework within the Kubernetes provider. Okay, so and it's implementing that on the Kubernetes provider. So the power of composition. Okay, the magic of Crossplane happens in the composition. There are three main tasks that composition performs: compose together set of managed resources based on a claim or composed resource, XRD, reference credentials needed for accessing the API, provider API, patch map from values provided in the claim. And that was all in the composition definition. So when we were looking at the composition, that is in here. This is kind of composition. It also shows it on here. Okay, so then this is in the workshop, it actually boils it down to remove complexity in this design. You can see the composition kind, and it includes a deployment, right? Whereas you want in a regular Kubernetes YAML, you have a deployment YAML, you have a service YAML, you'd have a HPA or an ingress YAML. This one, as you can see, has a service and it has a ingress right here. Okay. And now this whole demo you just walked through in this workshop showed an app and an app claim being deployed on Crossplane with the Kubernetes provider. The key takeaway is the power of Crossplane has the ability to compose infrastructure. And in this example, we just deployed infrastructure on Kubernetes, but it's composable, self-service, increased automation, a standardized collaboration, and it uses the Kubernetes API. Try it for yourself. Like I said, go to killercoda.com, and I encourage you to really look at the differences of Crossplane versus Terraform. You could still use Terraform if you choose. It's not that you can't use Terraform. If your shop or your app team, DevOps team already uses Terraform, it's not a blocker. Thank you again for watching this presentation. Happy holidays and have a great day